The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I rise to reaffirm Labour's opposition to this bill, and I do so on two grounds in particular. Firstly, sir, this bill undermines the independence of the Human Rights Commission. It makes it subject to consultation with a minister, which is the antithesis of the independence required of an independent body such as the Human Rights Commission, which is charged sometimes to lean against government policy, and therefore making its work programme subject to ministerial consultation is entirely the opposite of what would make a more effective and more efficient commission. Secondly, sir, that while it is true that the government has introduced a late SOP which restores the title of the Equal Opportunities Commissioner and the Race Relations Commissioner, which we welcome, sir, we still do not believe that the process there has been transparent, nor was the original bill one which would uphold New Zealand's international reputation. I will come back to that reason and the evidence for it. And thirdly, sir, that this bill still reduces the number of commissioners, thereby limiting the scope of the commission. And taken as a whole, Labour continues to believe that this was not a bill that was required, and that the so-called fix is worse than the problem. It reduces the effectiveness and efficiency of the commission. Sir, may I also introduce, as I set out the case here, the fact that the government's attempts to weaken the Human Rights Commission, because that's what it amounts to, or to fetter it, or to hog-tie it to the whims of the Minister of the day, sir, this is in keeping with other efforts the government has made to weaken the independent statutory watchdogs of our polity. The underfunding of the Ombudsman is something which is now so well known across the community. The backlogs which have been created by the current government's arrogant and out-of-touch efforts to constrain its resourcing is such, sir, that we are faced with a position where ministers thumb their noses at Official Information Act requests, awaiting an appeal which might take a year to come. Sir, we've also noticed in terms of independent watchdogs the weakness on the Overseas Investment Commission, which has been thrown into stark relief.
It's not on this.
No doubt by the Panama Papers.
Come back to the
and sir, coming back to this bill, our concern is that the weakening of the Human Rights Commission would be amongst the factors which Transparency International will consider next time around when they give New Zealand a further downgrade. And why does this matter, sir? Because New Zealand's international reputation as a trading nation, let alone our hoped-for position as an upstanding member of the international community committed to the rule of international law and human rights, is downgraded by these successive top slicing of these independent institutions by a government that is showing every sign of third-term itis, wanting to take more power to the executive, undermining the role of the watchdogs, undermining the role of the legislature. Mr Bridges has not learnt the lessons of the Northland campaign, where he showed up and offered a whole few bridges, and the good people of Northland send him packing. I'm responding to an interjection, Mr Chairman, which I'm sure you found as amusing as members opposite, because look how enlivened they are. Look how enlivened they are by the debate. Mr Bishop, the also ran from Lower Hutt, just looking across at his colleague in jealous admiration of his also ran in Northland. Look, I'm surrounded by the sons of Ngāpuhi, and they are looking across the chamber and saying, Mr Bridges, good luck. But look, back to the issues that concern us here. All revelry and joking aside, it's late in the evening. The issue here is that New Zealand's reputation counts for something. If we want to be a trading nation, if we want to expand our markets overseas, then our reputation for integrity has got to be beyond question. And it is a matter of concern to New Zealanders that we're slipping down the rankings for the Anti-Corruption Index and Transparency International, and it is in part because the government is doing successive small weakenings of our independent watchdog agencies, and that is what this is. Now let me come, sir, to the second issue here, which is concerned with the SOP. The government initially stripped out of, sir,
Honourable David Cunliffe.
thank you very much, stripped out of the legislation governing the Human Rights Commission the explicit titles of the Equal Opportunities Commissioner and the Race Relations Commissioner. And while we support, as our Green colleagues do, the appointment of a Disabilities Commissioner, we're very concerned to see those titles withdrawn. Now, it might seem semantic, but how would a commissioner stand up in public and uphold the specific weight of an office if that officer's title has been removed? And why do it, sir, other than to subsume that? I know that the SOP does, but I'm just saying that we in the Labour opposition have not been impressed by the original displayed intent nor the lack of transparency in the process. It's only after the United Nations itself criticised the government for the original drafting, and only after word has it that some of their coalition partners turned turtle on them and they lost the numbers to get the bill through in its original form, that they've had to compromise and come back to the House with their tail between their legs, offering up this SOP in a last-ditch attempt to get the bill through. Now, why such a humiliating back-down for a government on a bill that's been in the chamber since January last year, done in budget week? Has the government nothing better to do? Have they nothing better to do? There are huge issues facing New Zealand. Climate change, homelessness, poverty, sir.
If I have to interrupt the member again on relevancy, I'll terminate the speech. Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so therefore, sir, we have had a considered reflection on this bill and we maintain our opposition to it. And it is, in summary, based on 3 grounds. Firstly, the fettering and limitation of the Commission by requiring consultation with the Minister of the day. And I will say a couple more words on that. Sir, the Minister, of course, represents the Executive. The whole point of an independent statutory commissioner is to weigh against the Executive by taking an independent statutory perspective. The Commission has its own resourcing, it has its own media, it is not subject to Order in Council, it is not subject to Cabinet collective responsibility. That, sir, is the whole point. It is a creature created by statute, created by this House. It is delegated statutory powers which depend upon not only its actual independence, but its perceived independence. And, sir, that perceived independence is under threat, as is the actual independence, when its work plan has got to be consulted with the Minister. And consultation in this context is a loaded term. That means that the civil servant has to walk up to Minister Adams or Minister Collins' office, and as it was when it was drafted, to say, well, this is what we want to do, what do you think? And the Minister says, well, I really don't want you doing A, E and F on that list, and some sort of compromise might be worked out. And that's what consultation amounts to. That's inappropriate, both in substance and in perception, and that is the principal reason why this Labour Party continues its opposition to this bill. If we want to have a reputation for integrity, if we want that to underpin our position in international affairs, then we have to have not only the substance but also the recognition of that independence, and that does not mean fettering independent watchdog agencies to consultation with a member of the Executive. It is not appropriate. It's actually the antithesis of what the Commission should be. So summing up, sir, we've got 3 reasons we continue to oppose the bill. The first is the consultation process. The second is the lack of transparency and the original formation of the withdrawal of the titles of the Race Relations and Equal Opportunities Commissioner. And the third, sir, is the overall limitation on the number of Commissioner positions. Thank you very much.
Cool, Jacinda.